Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. On this edition of the Gaggle, we're going to talk about comparing the GOP convention to the Democrats of last week. Here, we're joined by Lionel. Of course, he needs no introduction, and we have George Szamuely. He is a writer, commentator, and one of the founders of this YouTube channel. Lionel, let me go to you first. I have to say, overall, I'm pleasantly surprised with the GOP convention. I thought it went to voters where they are, and I think that's good politicking, okay? Though there's some real strong downsides that I'd like to discuss as well. So your basic impression so far, go ahead.
I think, in the minority here, where I think these are titular, pro forma, they are part of the scenery. Years ago, let me just give you an example. There was a wonderful commercial that many Americans in my generation remember. It's the fellow who said, "Mamma mia, that's some species of meatball." And it was considered one of the greatest commercials of all time, except that nobody knew what the product was.
Yeah.
They loved the style, they loved the actor, they loved everything. By Monday...
It was the same thing with the Duracell batteries, I think.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah.
So by Monday, or maybe Friday, everything is forgotten. So if you look at this in terms of stagecraft, yes, you could say one thing. I have one simple message that would be my resounding theme. America is falling apart. There is rioting and chaos in the streets. That is chaos. I would have had a large 85-inch or foot screen that I would have pulled out on the stage, no matter who was talking, showing everything from Portland to Kenosha, because that is the issue. What scares me is that when you talk about America will rise, it gives people a sense of complacency, like, oh, okay, everything's going to be all right, so that's good. That's not what I want. And I'm also very quickly going to tell you that I'm also interested only in the undecided, independent voter in swing states and toss-up states. The rest of it is playing to the base, and if they're the base, who cares about playing to them? They're already committed.
But don't you think, George, don't you think that I can't disagree with Lionel's characterizations of the performaness of the conventions, but it tells you something about where these parties are at. And I thought that it is kind of interesting where these people are. The Democrats are just all over the place, and that's why they choreographed it the way they did, because they kept the lunatics off prime time, okay? And then what is left is this a redo of Hillary Clinton, okay? I mean, they learned nothing, okay? And you have this virtue signalings, identitarian politics, okay? I mean, I don't think that really moves anyone. I think actually it irritates a lot of people, to be honest. And then that you have the Republican side, which I did like how it was choreographed, because it was about people, okay? What bothered me is they still continue to push a Chamber of Commerce libertarian economic agenda, which, is a dead end also. And to address what Lionel just said, if you're going to get, I think you're right, independents, people that don't usually vote, and Trump needs to get back to people that voted for him in 2016. That might be the hardest group, okay? I think that's really key here. Your thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Trump was always going to have a very difficult time getting reelected, because his victory was very narrowly based. It was based on those industrial Midwestern states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, that voted for the Democrats since the 1980s. This time they took a gamble on Trump, and therefore, should they revert back to what they'd been doing since the 1980s, Trump was done. There was no way he could win the election without those states. So it was always going to be a tough battle for him. But this is where I think Lionel is spot on. Right now, there are the worst riots in the United States since the 1960s. We've not seen anything like this. I mean, this is one city after another is burning. People are getting killed. Crime is spiraling out of control in New York, in Chicago. People are afraid. This should be an opportunity for the Republicans to do what Richard Nixon did in 68 and 72, to present themselves as, we are the party that will protect you.
You're asking the obvious.
They ran away from the issue, so the Republicans should embrace this very issue.
But they're not, Lionel. They're not. The Republican Party, with some exceptions, are not going all in on Trump in this election cycle.
No.
I just don't see it. Okay. I think we should have all expected this, because there's been one thing that has never been really resolved, is that Trump ran as a populist. He's governed as essentially Jeb Bush, with some exceptions here. This is his problem. And I see this tension in the convention of a populist streak, but then old GOP, tried and tested 4 decades of policy. And I think that's a tension you see in this convention. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong, but again, I hate to be Mr. Analogy here, but sometimes I remember watching when toy manufacturers will try to build something and they'll say, now, this is what I think is a good toy. Let's see what the kids think. And then you give it to the child, and the child will look at it and say, I hate it. And you're thinking, how in the world could this child have missed this unique feature? I don't mean to sound like this, but Americans are spoiled. They are like this troubled kid who sometimes doesn't get it through their head that they could lose this, that they're not guaranteed this thing called freedom or liberty. And by the way, as far as the riots go, whenever there's any reference to the riots of the 60s and they play For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield, and you see it was a tension time, it was a time of tension. You see the cops clubbing students and it was over with. Today, what you're seeing is anarchic, this discombobulation, violence for the sake of violence from someone, and it is pure anarchy. And it's not communism, and it's not Marxism, it's not any of that stuff. It's this seditious insurrection, and that, to me, yet I repeat, is the theme that everybody gets. Trump is being handed the issue of issues. This is it. Vote for me, and I'll save you. Vote for the guy in the basement, and you're doomed. That's it.
Yeah, but I see it. It's very logical and it's very clear to me. However, George, we all know is that there's a very fine line in restoring law and order and then police oppression, okay? And it's all in the eye of the beholder. That's the problem here. It's a perception issue. Because I think Lionel's right, and I think you're right. This breakdown of law and order is terrifying. However, the perception of how do you deal with it, and Trump is a incumbent. When Nixon did it in '68, he wasn't the incumbent, and that's why it's so tricky here. I mean, I've seen people of extremely good faith that think very, very differently, and they're really, really at odds over this. Okay, and I understand it, and it's all an optics problem here, because even Don Lemon over at CNN. Is being prodded for, you have to recognize that this is real. I mean, after all these months of pretending they're just peaceful protesters, okay? It's how you apply law and order.
Yeah, no, that's right. But that's why it really should be up to Trump now to show muscle. Now, of course, he will be attacked ferociously.
But he will anyway.
But he hasn't really done it. I mean, he's presiding, essentially over anarchy, as Lionel says, and then he sends out these tweets, law and order. What does that mean? And if it then becomes that if Trump can't bring this anarchy to an end, and the Democrats are unwilling to bring the anarchy to an end, then the people will go for the Democrats, because I say, well, since Trump isn't doing it, let's go at least with the Democrats, because, well, at least they'll throw these people a bone, and then it'll be all over with.
Yeah, but see, but
this is a defining issue for Trump to say, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm bringing order. I'm arresting them. Sending them to prison for decades. This is who I am. That's who they are. And he's losing this opportunity.
Well, I agree with you, and I think anyone that thinks that if you attempt to appease this kind of criminal, and it is criminal element, their appetite will be insatiable. Okay, throw them a bone, okay? Because the Democrats, they love this right now, okay? But I think that, they will be consumed by it if something isn't done. Because this is a lot of privileged people out there getting their wild oats out, okay? I mean, politics is fun. It's violence. Go ahead, Lionel.
But unlike any other situation, here, President Trump could exact and could apply any amount of force because there is no police. There is no resistance. There is nothing. It's not like Mayor Daley. We're not talking about fascisti. We're not talking about the March on Rome. We're not talking about Mussolini. There is nothing. We have police who are retiring at record numbers. We have a new thing called defund the police, or this is my it's almost an neologism, reimagine. It's like if I said, Peter, we can't give you a raise, but we'd like to reimagine your pay structure. Nobody would ever listen to any of this except now. So that being said, let me also tell you that we have right now a Department of Justice that is doing nothing. Let me ask you, gentlemen, this. Assume, arguendo, for the sake of argument, that instead of Antifa or BLM or some hybrid thereof, there were white hooded Klansmen.
Yep.
In a picosecond, it would be eliminated. Or imagine hordes of white nationals or populists or somebody going up to black diners and chiding them and hectoring them about it would be over in a heartbeat. America, white and black, I would venture to say, are sitting back and saying, anytime you have no federal presence, there's insurrection statutes, there's all types of things that you can do. So there is no order. You also have Antifa, which is a racketeering enterprise by definition, who, by the way, for those who don't know this, the night before the first problems in New York, pallets of bricks were being mysteriously delivered on critical corners. It was the most organized group of spontaneity protests you can imagine. It is clearly a structure. Nothing's been done. They've done. I mean, so we're sitting back. There is no law and order.
I agree with you, but George, but then there that implies an implicit agreement that once we get Trump out of office and maybe take all branches of government, then we're going to go back home to our basements and have our mothers make lunch for us. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch for me, because once you appease this type of element, they only want more, okay? And they start believing the nonsense that they chime about all of the time. Go ahead, George.
Yes. However, if the Democrats do win in November, and then they decide to use massive force to bring this chaos to an end, there will be no critiques on CNN. There will be no critiques in the New York Times. I would say, yeah, well, this is what supposed to do. This is what the federal government is supposed to do. Yeah, absolutely. This is absolutely right. We need to bring this chaos to an end. So this is just simply the Democrats and the media in tow idea of getting Trump out of office. We've got the COVID, blame Trump for COVID. We've got the economic downturn, blame Trump for the economic downturn. And now we have chaos in all of the cities, blame Trump for that. It's a quite a clever strategy.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, and go ahead, finish up, Lionel. We're going to wrap soon.
And to wax conspiratorial just a tad, the argument could be made that these are basically shock troops that were provided to add to the idea of more and more chaos. And on November the 4th, not only does COVID curves flatten, not only is there an interesting expiration date on masks, but all of a sudden there's peace and prosperity. Antifa and BLM go back, and all of a sudden, hey, this is okay. Maybe things are better under Biden.
Let me finish on this here. Just to chew on here. Fiddling with the Electoral College after the election didn't work. The Amendments Act didn't work. Russiagate didn't work. Ukrainegate didn't work. Why do they think this is going to work? I'm going to leave that as a rhetorical question here. All right, Lionel, thank you very much. George, thank you very much for being here on The Gaggle. Everyone watching this, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.